Hello there, you are welcome to HisGov TV, and my name is Colin Nanayao Abebrese. Now, in this video, we are going to look at the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, and this topic follows the reasons for the partitioning, the reasons for the scramble and partitioning of Africa. So, if you have not watched that video, kindly do that for us. You can watch it for us. Now, our lesson objectives for today would be that by the end of this lesson, we should be able to state the recommendations or the agreements at the Berlin Conference. Now, when we say a conference, what do we mean by a conference? A group of people going together for a meeting, and that is what we mean by a conference. Berlin is the capital, I think, yes, is the capital of Germany. And so Berlin Conference, in simple terms, a meeting that took place in Berlin, in Germany. All right. Now, the Berlin Conference was a meeting between the European nations to formulate rules on how to peacefully partition or share Africa to prevent a possible outbreak of war among themselves. All right. And it must be noted that the Berlin Conference of 1884-1885 did not initiate the scramble for Africa. All right, it did not bring about a scramble. It only gave an international recognition, to a situation that was already in motion. So the scramble for Africa, as we have indicated in our previous lesson, was already in motion. It was happening already because of the Industrial Revolution and other factors. The scramble was already in the motion. The conference only came to recognize that, hey, Europeans are scrambling, and therefore we should find a way to bring them at peace with each other. Now, the conference tried to regulate the sharing of African territories among European imperialist powers so as to ward off the possibility or the outbreak of any war. Now, what then brought about the scramble? The immediate cause for the scramble was the rivalry over the Congo. Now, Portugal claimed over the Congo territory, and of course, was supported by Britain. So, of course, Portugal claimed that the Congo area and the river belonged to him, and that claim was supported by the British. Now, again, France also claimed that area, and they were also supported by Belgium. And so, this whole, back and forth could have, of course, possibly lead or degenerate, and it would have led to a whole lot of issues. So the conference was organized by Otto von Bismarck. He was the first German chancellor, and the conference was seen as the formalization of the scramble of Africa. Now, bear in mind that African countries were not recognized or were not represented under this conference. And the conference ushered in a period of heightened political activity in colonial powers, which eliminated and overrode a lot of pre-existing African autonomy and self-governance. Now, 14 European countries participated in the conference, and they were Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and the United States. I've given you like 8. Go and look for the other countries. Now, the main aim of the conference was to discuss in a peaceful, manner European claims to African territories and to agree on a modality for the partitioning, of the African continent among themselves. And as I've already indicated, Africans were not represented, as you saw in the countries. No African country was part of it. Now, when you look at the whole partition process, when you look at the map after they drew lines and shared African among themselves, you realize that France had the lion's share. Majority of the African land, went to France, and Britain only acquired Gambia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, as well as Nigeria. And this is in West Africa. All right. So let's then look at the General Act or the recommendations. What were some of the rules and principles that guided the Berlin Conference, so that was what the Europeans were going to based on. So they were going to operate based on those principles. So let's look at some of the recommendations or the act or the principles or the agreement. 1. The conference resolved to end slavery by African and Islamic powers. And the reason why they were demanding an end to slavery was basically because of the Industrial Revolution, which had taken place. And so they were no more in need of European slaves, because machines could do even more, greater work as compared to the use of human hands. And that was the reason why they did not, or they were not interested in slaves. I don't think, Now, the second recommendation was that the Congo was given to King Leopold II as his private property. Now, Belgium was not that rich. It wasn't a rich country. So even with this, Leopold had to beg the European powers to give him the Congo. And if you read about what Belgium, King Leopold did in the Congo, amputating people's hands, and it's just, disturbing, just horrifying, very, very horrible. I think I had a video. I'll do a video on that issue. King Leopold's activities in the Congo for you. So, as his private property, it means nobody was going to do that. Of course, was going to go there. The next or third recommendation was that the 14 signatory powers would also have free trade throughout the Congo Basin. Sure. So the Congo Basin area that they were fighting among, all the European countries had freedom to go in there. The fourth of the recommendations was that all European powers should be free to trade in the Congo Basin, and they should all maintain free navigation on the Niger and Congo rivers, and that was the area that was contested for by the French and for the British. For the Portuguese and the French. Now, the fifth of the principles, which was also very important, had to do with the principle of effective occupation, was also introduced to stop powers from setting up colonies in name only. Thus, the European powers were expected, to form or to establish a form of effective government in their territory. Now, this recommendation was added because most of the European countries had only set up colonies in name only. Name only in the sense that they were not colonizing them, but they had declared them as a protectorate. We are only protecting them from other European countries. So by this recommendation, nothing like that should happen. You should go in there, set up a form of government in there. And this led to a whole lot of wars between the British and most African countries like Asante, and all of that. Let's look at the next one, the sixth one. Now, any fresh act of taking possession of any portion of the African coast would have to be notified by the power taking possession. If you wanted to take any portion along the coast of Africa, you should notify other European powers before taking. The next one, the seventh one, was that every imperial power was to be free to extend its coastal occupation within a certain limits into the interior, all right, and establish a spheres of influence in that area. So if you already had a colony like Ghana, for instance, the Gold Coast, the British had a colony in the Gold Coast, that is along the coast. Per this recommendation, they were empowered to go further into the interior. And that explains the reason why the British, after this Berlin Conference, came with force to really, silence the Asante. So they exiled their kings. A lot of kings and queens were exiled in many parts of the African continent because they were given the mandate to establish a form of government. And so that is, of course, what of course, that led to that kind of, war. Now, the last one was that treaties signed with African chiefs were to be considered as a valid sovereignty, of course, valid titles to their sovereignty. Can you imagine that? Of course, treaties signed with African chiefs were to be considered as valid, of course, valid titles to their sovereignty. I can't even talk. Valid titles to their sovereignty. So even if the treaty is a peace treaty, per this one, of course, consider it as that the people have given you, their sovereignty. That was not the case. There were so many peace treaties signed among the 1844 bond, the Formula Treaty, and they are telling these Europeans that consider those ones as a valid title. Man, you don't do that. You do not do that. Well, good. So you have had a very interesting. We've had a very interesting topic. So I hope that you have learned something. Let's hear your view in the comment section if you have any question about the scramble and partition. With regards to the Berlin Conference and the terms, and we will do that. If by any chance you have any topic, we can also do that. So you have a nice day and thank you for your time.